Today I want to talk to you about American independence versus UN interdependence. So more than 2 centuries ago, our forefathers on July 4th, 1776 declared independence. They listed all the grievances and why we wanted to declare independence, and they also outlined what the purpose of government was. The founders said that all men are created equal, that we all have inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and that these rights come from our Creator, from God. They also said that the purpose of government was to protect these rights. That's why governments are instituted among men. So this was a really unique document in the history of the world. It was basically these Judeo-Christian principles that God has given us rights and that we institute government to protect those rights. Unfortunately, our independence today is under threat like never before. We have the United Nations, which is now running around calling for interdependence. Now they have Agenda 2030, which they call their Declaration of Interdependence. Now this Agenda 2030, we've done a lot of work in the New American Magazine exposing this, but to summarize it briefly, it's basically a roadmap for global totalitarianism in the next 15 years. They're saying it's going to cost trillions of dollars. We need to have national and international wealth redistribution. We need to have government-provided health care. We need to indoctrinate children to have the quote-unquote knowledge and skills necessary to promote the UN's agenda. And they say this right in the documents. I mean, it's just every nutty UN idea you could think of rolled into one. And now we have the Secretary General of the United Nations and his deputy saying that this is the Declaration of Interdependence. At the same time, we have the UN already acting very much like a government. We have them running their own police forces, running their own armies and militaries. They have the UN peacekeeping forces, right? It's a perfect example of doublespeak, right? These are war-making forces. They have their own courts, their own environmental bureaucracy, their own educational bureaucracy, their own health bureaucracy, right? All these UN agencies and ministries purporting to decide things for the American people and for the rest of humanity. So you also have the head of the United Nations, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, talking about how the United Nations is now the parliament of humanity. Now a parliament is of course a sovereign body that makes laws, right? Now who elected this UN parliament? How do we get rid of members of this parliament if we don't like them? Well, take a look at the membership roster of the United Nations. Even the establishment admits, the Freedom House admits, that the majority of members of the UN General Assembly are not free. So these are unfree governments. Many of them are just outright brutal dictatorships, mass murderers, genocidal psychopaths, communists, Islamists. I think of Castro, Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, Kim Jong-un in North Korea. These are all members of this thing that they're calling the Parliament of Humanity. So the UN's vision of global interdependence and really global government is what they're calling for, is fundamentally at odds with our Declaration of Independence. Our Declaration of Independence protects our liberties. Our Declaration of Independence created the government that is designed to protect our liberties. And it comes down to a choice. Do we want to remain free and independent as Americans, or do we want to be involved in this Parliament of Humanity global interdependence? And you know, there's a lot of reasons to be very concerned about this movement for global interdependence. Of course, it's not a new movement. We talk about this in our cover story. This has been around for quite some time, this effort to build up this global interdependence and this global government. But it's a very dangerous idea. I mean, everybody remembers the axiom from Lord Acton that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, if you have this global government with a monopoly on force, that is absolute power. There's no checks and balances built into the UN system like we have in the US system, where power is distributed vertically and horizontally, separated into 3 branches of government. Then we have the federal and the state government, each of which is supposed to provide a check on the other. And you know, the UN has none of these things. They are in a quest for total power. So as Americans, we have a choice to make, and we need to make the right choice. The founders of this nation, when they set out to establish this nation, they said, you know, one of the purposes was to secure the blessings of liberty to themselves and their posterity. We need to do the same for ourselves and for our posterity. We need to make sure that our nation remains independent so that we can decide our own destiny without the the interference of what I call the dictators club, what Ban Ki-moon calls the Parliament of Humanity. And this is a crucial question, and it's not going to go away, and we really, as Americans, we need to stand up and we need to say, no, we are going to stay free and we are going to stay independent. Please check out our cover story. It's the July 4th issue of the New American Magazine, and thank you for listening.